A reconnaissance drone circled over the desolate, arid land, transmitting a series of images that instantly put the command center on high alert. Under infrared, a long line of vehicles, clearly distinguishable, moved in a tight formation. There were 30 vehicles in total, including 24 armored pickup trucks mounted with heavy machine guns and 6 tractor-trailers sealed with reinforced steel. The engines of each vehicle glowed brightly like streaks of hot coals, forming a heat signature that stretched across the mountain slope. Initial analysis confirmed that all 6 tractor-trailers showed signs of concealing cargo with an unusually high density. Combined with previous transport signals, intelligence quickly concluded inside was a billion-dollar shipment of narcotics being moved deep into the territory of an armed criminal organization. This wasn't a routine delivery, it was one of the largest batches recorded in years. However, the thing that changed the atmosphere in the command room wasn't the cargo. An urgent report was sent immediately when satellite imagery matched previous hostage tracking data. The target the convoy was heading towards was a cluster of fortified bunkers deep within the canyon, where the criminal organization was holding hundreds of people kidnapped from fishing villages, border towns, and ports. Among them were several U.S. citizens who had gone missing in recent transnational crime operations. The official count was announced: 280 hostages. They were scattered across different cells, cut off from any means of communication, and had received no assistance for months. A teacher, a retired Coast Guard veteran, a retired truck driver, and many others from coastal communities. They had all vanished from the map of life. And now their images reappeared in the reconnaissance data, being held at the destination of the convoy moving under the cover of night. The newly updated information instantly switched the entire command system to emergency control mode. Screens were flooded with data from the canyon area, showing a network of underground tunnels, entrances, and heavily fortified defensive positions. Many approaches were covered by thick concrete and tunnels running deep into the bedrock. All evidence indicated this was a man-made fortress, designed to withstand any conventional assault. A subsequent reconnaissance report ratcheted up the pressure. Data from encrypted intercepts indicated that the criminal organization had prepared a contingency plan to destroy all hostages if an attack was detected. A remote detonator was believed to be capable of operating even under heavy jamming. If the convoy reached the site and their plan was activated, the entire complex would be sealed, making any rescue attempt virtually impossible. In the command center, the tactical map of the canyon area turned to an alert color. The convoy continued to drive deeper, speed steady, formation unchanged. This meant the criminal organization was completely confident that no force was capable of approaching at this time. Confident, or preparing for a plan to eliminate the hostages on the very day the shipment arrived. No one in the control room could afford to ignore that. The operational focus was clearly defined. The convoy must be tracked to the end, the base neutralized, and the explosive system handled before any activation command is issued. One wrong step, and 280 lives would vanish in silence. And from that moment on, the rescue mission was no longer an option, it became an absolute duty. In the war room, all eyes were focused on the satellite image chain, which had just been enhanced for resolution. The main complex of bunkers at the heart of the canyon revealed an unusually dense structure, continuously connected concrete walls, underground pipes running like a fishbone network, and multi-story cell blocks. The more they zoomed in, the more the data resembled a maze deliberately constructed to resist any external approach. The technical division detected lines running along the corridors, connecting across corners, and hugging every stairwell. Using the thermal map, engineers quickly confirmed it was not a conventional electrical system, but the control mechanism for explosives cleverly hidden beneath false walls. A single signal from the central control room could activate everything. The conclusion was drawn without debate. If the criminal organization sensed danger, 280 hostages would be wiped out before forces could even reach the outer door. The atmosphere in the command room grew heavy as the aftermath simulation ran. Each marked detonation point spread in a chain, showing overlapping risk zones like a net surrounding the entire cell block. This was no longer a conventional rescue mission but one requiring the neutralization of the most complex explosive network ever recorded in transnational crime operations in this region. The representative for the Tactical Rescue Force presented the risk assessment. A direct assault was immediately ruled out because any remote suppression strike could shake the concrete foundation, creating an uncontrollable chain reaction. Intercepting the convoy was also dismissed, as an open confrontation would lead the criminal organization to activate the hostage destruction command to erase all evidence. There were no longer any solutions that allowed for time to be wasted. An analysis team proposed a two-pronged approach. From the river, elite teams would approach the fortress to secure the control points. From the forest, they would access a ventilation shaft leading to the lower level to separate the detention area from the detonation axis. The goal was to hit the control system before any suspicion was raised. Every movement had to be absolutely silent and fast, preventing the criminal organization from having time to move the hostages or prepare a counterattack. While the tactical teams reviewed the plan, the cybersecurity division received a weak encrypted signal. Upon decoding, the signal revealed that the criminal organization had increased checks on the explosive system in recent days, likely preparing to switch to a high alert status. This meant the rescue team could not delay. If they were slow, the entire explosive chain could be set to automatic mode, making any attempt at disarming it virtually impossible. The command center immediately mapped out the response timeline. Every minute that passed translated into increased risk. From the new data, it was clear that if the convoy was allowed to arrive, the criminal organization would increase the number of guards and lock down all corridors, rendering any infiltration plan unfeasible. The specialized team prepared the deployment order, while briefly reviewing the key points: neutralize the remote signaling system, capture the control room, and secure the path that could lead to the main explosive detonator. A decision was issued, definitive and with no turning back. Deploy using the two-pronged infiltration plan, prioritizing the disruption of the explosive system before approaching any cell blocks. The focus of the operation was not to eliminate the criminal organization but to keep all hostages alive. The participating forces received the order, checked their gear, reviewed the data interface, and prepared to enter a zone where any mistake was equivalent to hundreds of lives. From that moment, every eye in the command room was on the canyon map. No one spoke another word. There was no more time to think about alternative options. The only thing left was to execute the command with absolute precision before the entire explosive system turned the base into a deep hole with no trace of those who needed to be saved. The special forces approached the target along the two approved axes. From the river, dive teams moved close, following the murky water flowing down into the canyon. Navigation devices were completely turned off to avoid detection. Upon reaching the shore, silent figures emerged, splitting into small groups heading toward the lockdown points. The first objective was to neutralize the criminal organization's outermost security layer before they had a chance to activate the internal alarm system. From the forest slope, the remaining force moved along a narrow trail, avoiding any route that could cause vibrations in the bedrock. They approached the ventilation shafts leading to the lower level, where the explosive wires were believed to run along the corridors. Both teams had to enter simultaneously to maintain the attack tempo and prevent the adversary from identifying the main point of entry. On the upper level, as the first team of the force appeared, two gate guards were secured in seconds with quick, clean maneuvers. No alarm was raised. The door leading to the administrative area opened to the technical floor. This was the critical point because this floor contained the cables capable of controlling the entire base's explosive system. Upon approaching the area, the reconnaissance team discovered numerous wire segments running diagonally beneath the metal ceiling. This confirmed the command center's initial assessment. The explosive system was arranged in a tightly linked network, where even a single break or strong impact could trigger a mass activation. All movement had to maintain the lowest intensity, avoiding pressure on the structure. Meanwhile, the team on the forest slope had inserted lock-picking equipment into the largest ventilation shaft. Inside the shaft was a long concrete corridor, running straight down to the central control area. A small guard post was situated right at the end of the corridor. As the force approached, a guard unexpectedly turned around, his hand moving toward a signaling device hanging on his belt. That action forced the team leader to make an instant decision. A strong takedown neutralized the guard's resistance, and the signaling device was detached from his hand before he could activate it. Although casualties were kept low, this was a clear demonstration that a single moment of inaccuracy could put the entire area at absolute risk. When the two teams converged in the technical bay, the demolition team began identifying each wire run. Some segments had been camouflaged with fake coating to look like industrial electrical lines. Others were hidden under ventilation ducts. Every movement had to be performed within strictly safe limits. Instead of disarming immediately, the demolition team marked each junction to plan for simultaneous neutralization at a later stage, reducing the risk of a chain reaction. Suddenly, running noises erupted from the north corridor. The special forces immediately spread out, forming a defensive line in the dark. The criminal organization had detected anomalies in the outer perimeter. An armed group moved down the stairs, weapons ready. The Special Forces chose not to engage in direct confrontation. They were forced to deal with them quickly, cleanly, and without letting any warning signal get out. Short, precise bursts were used to halt the opposing group, minimizing vibration on the concrete floor. After neutralizing the threat, the demolition team located the main conductor line running deep into the central area. This was the axis connecting to the main detonator capable of destroying the entire fortress. To reach it, the force had to open the large steel door ahead. This was the boundary entering the detention area, considered the most dangerous part of the base. This door not only separated the two areas but was also the transition point to the decisive phase of the operation. Inside were explosive charges, armed subjects, and hundreds of exhausted hostages in the dark. To save them, the force had to cross this line without allowing any force to impact the waiting explosive network. The steel door leading down to the detention area was opened using mechanical manipulation to avoid triggering vibration sensors. As the hinge moved open slightly, layers of wires appeared right at the door's edge, a crude but extremely effective warning loop. Technicians quickly scanned with magnetic devices, confirming. Behind the door was a secondary line connected directly to the backup explosive charge. The door was only allowed to be opened millimeter by millimeter with the coordination of the entire team. Just as the door created enough space for the force to squeeze through, heavy movement suddenly occurred on the upper floor. The internal observation system recorded the criminal organization's armed group flooding the metal balcony surrounding the central area. They had detected the abnormal disturbance at the security line and switched to high defense mode. The sudden increase in pressure made every team on the technical floor understand they were entering the tensest segment of the operation. A special forces team was deployed to the upper floor to hold the blockade point. The stairwell was only wide enough for two people to move at once, forcing them to advance in short steps to avoid creating oscillation on the steel frame. When the armed group appeared, firepower was used with absolute precision. Short bursts eliminated the opposing force without loud echoes, helping to avoid triggering the alarm system. However, the exchange still left a physical impact on the structure, forcing the technical team below to speed up before any accumulated vibration could spread to the explosive network. On the lower floor, the demolition team moved deeper into the main corridor. This position was considered the most dangerous point because right behind the concrete wall were the cell blocks, surrounded by a series of high-powered explosive charges. Technicians continuously scanned for signals while marking each intersection between the primary and secondary wire runs. Any deviation during the neutralization process could cause the explosive charges to function as a synchronized system. As the force continued toward the final narrow intersection, a guard from the criminal organization rushed out of a side room, gripping a signaling device. The close range made using weapons risky, as it could cause shock to the concrete floor. A special forces member was forced to engage in a direct takedown, restraining the individual's arm before he could activate the device. The struggle was extremely brief, ending with the subject incapacitated. The detonator was secured, but the formation had to adjust its position to avoid severing the wires behind them. Meanwhile, the pressure on the upper floor continued to increase. Another enemy group moved from a side corridor, intending to retake the high ground. The special forces concentrated their fire to stop the advance, but one soldier was lightly wounded in the shoulder by a ricocheting metal shard. Although the injury was not severe, maintaining his position was critical because any retreat would create a gap for the criminal organization to retake the observation point. When the upper floor was temporarily stabilized, the force on the technical floor approached the second large steel door, the final boundary before entering the cell block system. This was where the explosive network intersected most densely. Technicians confirmed the area was highly sensitive, and a misplaced touch could wipe out the entire lower level. The special forces maintained a moving pace that was barely noticeable. No extraneous action was permitted. The demolition team cut the secondary lines one by one, separating them from the main line to reduce the risk of vibration. After several minutes of continuous checking, the final junction was neutralized successfully, allowing them to open the door without triggering any chain reaction. As the final door moved open, the heavy, rusty air spilled into the corridor. Inside was the detention area with hundreds of hostages trapped between the explosive system and the remaining armed subjects. The special forces had reached the edge of the base's most dangerous center where any wrong move could cost all 280 lives. From here, every subsequent step would no longer be preparation, but the direct confrontation with the operation's ultimate limit. When the steel door was fully opened, the cell block area was revealed in dim light, showing a danger level far beyond all initial analysis. Explosive charges were placed close to every railing, attached beneath the metal floor, and arranged in a cross-lock pattern that meant any shock could create a chain reaction. The hostages were confined in small cells, cramped and exhausted, completely unaware that they were standing right next to detonators with enough power to flatten the entire area. The technical team entered first. They scanned every location, identifying 3 main control lines running throughout the floor. 2 secondary lines were buried under the stairs leading down to the lower section, and another line connected directly to the observation deck where the opposition was regrouping. If the armed group above counterattacked and caused a strong vibration, the entire neutralization effort would be ruined. On the upper floor, the criminal organization's shooters had gathered to launch a final counteroffensive. They fired from narrow angles to split the special forces and create an opportunity to reach the central control room. The special forces were forced to deploy in a spread formation, both holding the line and minimizing the shock transmitted down to the cell block floor. Every shot had to be carefully calculated not to impact the steel structure below. On the lower floor, the demolition team began working on the heart of the explosive network. This area was considered the life and death point of the entire operation because the system was designed with multiple backup channels, ready to activate even if the main explosive axis was neutralized. One technician marked the points to be separated, while the other used dampening equipment to keep each segment of the wire stable. Sweat dotted their vests, but no one was allowed to stop because even a moment's delay could allow the counterattack from above to indirectly activate the entire system. While the demolition team was cutting the first line, a new armed group suddenly appeared on the upper floor, pouring down the stairs. They threw hard objects onto the steel floor to cause vibrations, hoping to trigger a malfunction in the explosive network to kill all the hostages and erase evidence. The special forces immediately suppressed the fire, neutralizing the group with precise shots. But one soldier was wounded in the leg by a bouncing metal shard. Despite the injury, he resolutely held his position, preventing the enemy from reclaiming the staircase. Only when the last person had left the cell blocks did the entire team confirm that the most dangerous phase was over. The explosive network was neutralized, the cells were freed, and 280 lives had left the death zone. However, the operation was not yet complete. They still had to fight their way out of the base while the criminal organization's armed forces were entrenched at the narrow choke points outside. As the demolition team approached the final control line, the pressure reached its peak. This final wire was the junction for all remaining explosive charges. A slight misstep would switch the system to self-activation mode. The technician held his breath, turning the clamping device little by little. After a few seconds that felt like hours, the final explosive line was successfully separated from the main axis. The entire system was rendered inert. As soon as the safe signal was received, the special forces began opening each cell block. The heavy iron doors were pushed open, revealing people utterly exhausted after months of confinement. Some collapsed as they stepped out of the cell, forcing the force to help them every step of the way. Many cried silently, while others still held empty stares, unable to believe they had escaped the death zone. While the force moved the hostages into the corridor, the upper floor continued to hold the line to prevent another counterattack. The coordination between the two floors formed a secure corridor for hundreds of people to move out of the area. Groups of 10 were led in different directions to avoid congestion and reduce stress on the floor structure. A few hostages were too weak and were carried on temporary stretchers. Only when the last person had left the cell blocks did the entire team confirm that the most dangerous phase was over. The explosive network was neutralized, the cells were freed, and 280 lives had left the death zone. However, the operation was not yet complete. They still had to fight their way out of the base while the criminal organization's armed forces were entrenched at the narrow choke points outside. The remainder of the operation would be a fight to secure the escape corridor, and no mistakes were permitted. As the final group of hostages was moved out of the detention area, the special forces immediately redeployed for the withdrawal phase. This was not the easy part of the operation, but the direct confrontation between two lines of force in a cramped space. The criminal organization, though unable to activate the explosive network, still controlled some main exits and had many shooters entrenched in the west corridor area. While the force moved the hostages into the corridor, the upper floor continued to hold the line to prevent another counterattack. The coordination between the two floors formed a secure corridor for hundreds of people to move out of the area. Groups of 10 were led in different directions to avoid congestion and reduce stress on the floor structure. A few hostages were too weak and were carried on temporary stretchers. The lead team approached the intersection between the technical floor and the exit. This was a narrow concrete tunnel, running zigzag upwards. Booby trap sensors had been removed earlier, but most of the structure was still affected by the fighting. Every move had to be calculated not to put more pressure on the already weakened ceiling and walls. Hostages moved in small groups, flanked by the force, maintaining a steady pace to prevent chaos. In the west corridor, the criminal organization's armed forces began a new assault. They set up crossfire positions from two side rooms to lock down the path of movement. The special forces counter-attacked with accurate bursts, prioritizing the elimination of the corner holders to create an opening. One soldier was wounded in the arm when a piece of cracked concrete hit him, but he maintained his position to avoid creating a gap for the enemy. Light casualties occurred sporadically, but the formation strictly adhered to the initial tactical structure. In the middle line, the hostage escort team continued to move up the ramp. Some who were too weak had to be carried on temporary stretchers, while others needed help with every step because their legs were almost powerless. Each group that exited the tunnel was immediately handed over to the support force outside, where a temporary assembly point was being established on the flat ground near the riverbank. All operations took place quickly and steadily to avoid bottlenecks in the tunnel. When the majority of the hostages were out of the canyon, the special forces transitioned to sweeping the area backward to ensure no armed groups were ambushing along the retreat route. In the engine room, an enemy group entrenched behind metal drums, attempting to make a breakthrough to retake the control unit. This short counterattack forced the special forces to use heavier fire, ending it quickly to avoid prolonged engagement. The result was the neutralization of the enemy group, but two special forces members sustained minor injuries from impact with metal bars during rapid movement. Outside the canyon, the security perimeter began to expand to prepare for moving the hostages to a safe area on the rocky slope. Rescue helicopters were dispatched to the temporary landing zone. Those who were too exhausted were evacuated first to receive medical attention as soon as their blood pressure and body temperature stabilized. The medical force deployed multiple field receiving stations, checking each person with a streamlined yet thorough process. Meanwhile, the remaining Special Forces team returned to the lower floor to destroy all key points of the base. They used low-yield explosives placed at the marked locations, ensuring the fortress was completely neutralized without endangering the team escorting the hostages outside. The placements were carefully calculated not to cause landslides onto the retreat area. When all the hostages were moved out of the danger zone, a confirmation signal was sent back to the command center. The special forces proceeded to the final step, demolishing the control rooms, sweeping up any remaining documents, and withdrawing in a closed formation. The injured were moved out first, followed by the remaining force to secure the exit path. Finally, as the entire team passed the mouth of the canyon, the base behind them began to collapse in sections. The special forces did not stop to observe. They continued to escort the hostages to the high ground, where the first light of day appeared on the horizon. The operation was not over, but they had successfully brought 280 people out of a place where it seemed no one could leave alive. The mission to sweep the entire area and hand over documents to the investigative team was just beginning, but the most dangerous part was behind them.